I'm going to call to order the Board of Education regular meeting. It's Monday, November 9th, 2020, and it is 7 p.m. The Board of Education makes available at least one current copy of the Open Meetings Act, which is posted on the west wall of the meeting room, accessible to all members of the public. Would you now rise with me and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, can I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the consent agenda as presented, including the approval of minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting on October 12, 2020, approval of the proposed accounts for payment, approval of budgetary receipts and expenditures for October 2020, approval of the Committee of the Whole minutes for October 22nd, 2020, approval of option students, approval of policy, second reading of policy 1211, Title IX, approval of the retirement of John Jarash, middle school principal, and Charles Brockman, industrial tech, approval of the contract for Hunter Weiss for industrial tech, and that is all.
Thank you. I have a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Janet. Jason, did you want to comment on money?
Yes, just a couple of comments in regards to some items on the consent agenda. First of all, in terms of the treasurer's report, just a quick update. Bills totaled $337,206.93. Benefits and payroll, $1,715,245.12, which brings total expenses for the month to $2,052,452.05. General fund revenue was $936,205.10. So how that all shakes out is we're almost identical to where we were a year ago at this time in terms of our general fund reserve. So we're in good shape. We just need to continue to keep an eye on that and make sure that our expenditures stay in check where we can maintain that on the basis of the revenue that we're receiving. So with that, questions on the treasurer's report? One other thing I will throw in is we have 2 retirements tonight that we'd like to just recognize and appreciate and extend a very heartfelt thank you to John Jarash, middle school principal. In my 3 years here, I've come to appreciate everything that John has done for our administrative team, but more importantly for the kids of the district that he oversees and the people that he works with. I think he's done an outstanding job of creating an environment that is second to none at the middle school here in Beatrice. And so we just want to say congratulations on that decision. No, it's never easy. He did inform us he would like to be Zoomed in or Google Meet in when he's in his duck line next year and we're having our administrative team meetings. So we will make sure to do that for him. We will miss him. John is a great person on our team, and we will truly miss him. Also to Charles Brockman, who, this is kind of a second retirement. He was grateful enough to come back after he had announced his retirement last year and be a supervising teacher for Hunter Weiss, who he received a contract for at Industrial Tech. So as Hunter finishes up his degree requirements and transitions into that position, Chuck will retire and be done here at Beatrice Public Schools. And so we just want to say thank you with very high regards for his service to our students during his time here as well.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments or questions on the rest of the consent agenda?
You know, the only thing that I might say is I too have enjoyed working with John Jarash. There were times that he gave great insight into situations that I really appreciated, that I learned a lot from him. So thank you.
All right, with that, can I have your votes, please? And what does Steve say?
Steve, what's your vote on the consent agenda?
Jason, now that I think about it, What was that said?
I'm sorry.
What did the governor say?
That's okay. What was your vote on the consent agenda?
You can do.
Are you a yes?
Okay.
Shaking your head yes.
Shake. Okay. We have 7 yeses. All right, next up, we have outstanding recognition, employee of the month, Dr. Nielsen.
Okay, I'm gonna have Mr. Jansen come up with me as well. You guys are fine, I can yell loud enough.
Okay.
If you can't hear me. I think I talked a little bit louder with the mask anyway. I was getting told to quiet down, but, okay. Mrs. Bonnie Beatty is the October Employee of the Month, so come on down.
Come on down.
I know. You're the next contestant on. Bonnie Beatty is an excellent candidate for Employee of the Month for the work done as a paraprofessional in our district, as well as the recent work on a new sensory path. Bonnie spent countless hours over the summer creating this new addition. A sensory path is a colorful, creative, and playful way for kids to build sensory pathways, connections in the brains that are responsible for sight, touch, sound, etc., which enable kids to complete complex, multi-stage tasks. It is also just plain fun and helps even the most fidgety students expend energy. When visiting all 3 buildings, it has been a joy to watch students explore the alphabet, numbers, shapes, and other educational concepts as they walk down the hallways. It is so inviting, I almost wanted to start jumping from letter to letter. It is a great example of making learning fun. Bonnie is also a phenomenal special education paraprofessional. She is constantly working with students to build strong relationships. Bonnie pushes each child to excel in his or her learning adventure. There are times when you enter the classroom that you cannot tell who the teacher is because Bonnie is a master of her craft. There are times during summer school she would teach for us, and I would watch her with students that maybe were struggling in classrooms. She would be able to take them, bring them back in, and then get them back into that learning environment. She is awesome. Bonnie is a staple in our district and has done amazing things. The sensory pass at the buildings was over and beyond the expectation of the district. We thank her for creating this new experience for our young learners because she was willing to design, create, and install the sensory paths throughout the 3 buildings. We would like to congratulate Mrs. Bonnie Beatty, October's Employee of the Month. John has something for me.
Just so you know, Bonnie just didn't do the sensory pass. She also did encouraging and positive words in all of our bathrooms throughout the 2 buildings as well. And the kids have really enjoyed that as well to see. So she's done phenomenal for all of us. So thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you. Get back real quickly. Mr. Alexander wanted.
I'd smile, but you couldn't tell me.
I know.
You're not too much credit, I guess.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
All right, next up, we have Business Friend of the Month, Dr. Nielsen and Mr. Alexander are covering this.
Okay, so, Clayton, if you don't mind coming up, we'd like to talk to you a little bit. So we just started this year, Clayton, as a Business Friend of the Month, that we determined that on the basis of all the things that our community does for us, it's important to give back a little recognition and appreciation for the businesses that contribute so much to our school. So tonight, we'd like to recognize Sunrise Bakery and Clayton Reputable for the many great things they offer our schools. Sunrise Bakery has been a staple in our community and definitely is considered a staple in our schools as well. One of the most recent ways Sunrise has impacted our districts and students is during the May 2020 graduation time period. Many people don't know it, but because of the pandemic, the graduation ceremony was drastically different last year, as well as the parties our seniors had. This year, Sunrise provided a free and delicious graduation cake to all of our seniors free of charge. If you've had Sunrise cake before, you know that it's a highly valuable donation. As well as creating a lasting impact during the pandemic, Sunrise Bakery is always willing to help when the school needs support. Sunrise has participated in the Walk the Track fundraisers, the Beatrice chapter of Special Olympics, the Accelerated Reading Program, and many other fundraisers too numerous to list. along with free donuts to support our efforts and reward students for their successes. Sunrise is also a strong partner in fundraisers supporting students who are in need because they are battling a terminal illness. During the upcoming month, the Beatrice administration team will be handing out cookies and hot chocolate during the holiday lighted parade, assuming we get to have that. And Sunrise provides a warm facility along with the cookies and hot chocolate for us to hand out. This has been a great addition to the parade and sees many visitors stopping by to warm up with a sweet treat. Wouldn't be possible without Sunrise Bakery. Clayton is the 4th generation owner of Sunrise and the 3rd generation graduate of Beatrice High School. BPS is truly thankful that he continues to be a strong part of our school community. We think of you as one of us every time we get to hand out your delicious treats to our kids. We know that the donuts sold to us make everyone happy, so thank you for everything that you have done and continue to do for our students in Beatrice Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
One other thing that is not mentioned in the dialogue, but I'll bring it up, is I believe that we have some tables that in one of our classrooms that Clayton was directly responsible for making that saved us about $1,000 in ordering, if not more. And he made the tables from scratch. All we had to do was count my brother. That was your brother, okay.
And then the red logo.
Yeah, the red logo. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Jason. Next up, we have the NASB Awards. Mr. Alexander.
Okay. Every year, our board members are participants and donate valuable hours of their time to professional development opportunities in which they learn about becoming better board members. And the NASB tracks all their donated time to the professional development activities that they participate in. Whether it be new board member orientation, whether it be strategic planning, whether it be NASB self-evaluation tools, they build up points for every one of those items that they attend. And when they reach a certain level, the NASB awards them for their particular level. So this year, our 2 award winners for their contribution and donated time and taking time out of their day, reaching level 6 and getting the messenger bag is board member Doris Martin. And reaching level 7, and I'm not going to take it out of here, but in here there's a paperweight, and that goes to President John Zimmerman. Thank you for your dedication.
All right, next up, we have the student update, Colton Brenner.
Hi, okay, so recently we just finished fall sports at the high school. It was very nice to make it completely through that, as there were a couple times where most of the student body didn't figure we would even make it a couple weeks into the school year, so that was nice. There was a fall musical concert that took place in the O-Zone, not in the Hevelin Center because of social distancing reasons. That happened with masks, and we were all 6 feet apart, and they only let in immediate family. This last week, the one-act play took place in the Hevelin. Upcoming, usually there's a Veterans Day service, but this year due to COVID, there is no Veterans Day service in person, and we will be doing it virtually. And winter sports start next week. In the middle school, they were unable to host the annual Veterans Day ceremony. However, Mr. Plitsky and Mr. Essam created a class fundraiser to help purchase replacement flags for the Veterans Memorial. The students raised $1,943 to help replace flags for the next 3 years, so that was a pretty awesome musical numbers to share virtually with their families. Awesome new idea to help behavior incentives with a mystery box where they can earn gold coins to redeem a free book. And in the preschool, Mrs. Timmerman will be reporting later tonight, so.
Is there a haircut in the future?
It's done, isn't it?
Oh, did you
Yeah,
do it?
that's done.
I think, yeah.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Cole. Next up, we have the board reports. Mrs. Martin, you have the committee of the whole.
The Committee of the Whole met on Thursday, October 22nd. A technology update was given by the ESU 5 technology team. They said that summer projects completed over the summer included security concerns within the district and future recommendations for the district. Some future goals were also shared with the board. These goals include technology training for staff, simplifying the classroom tech tools, and implementing a one-on-one learning environment and RFID key cards. Mr. Alexander said that the district continues to do research on topics related to COVID as things constantly evolve. He also shared that the CARES Act funding totaled $338,416 in total allocations. Funds have been used to purchase Chromebooks, Google licensing software, carrying cases, and hotspot devices for families. He also spent some time talking about the tiers. Then he also some protocol changes that Mr. Alexander said he's been working with Master Randall and the winter activity sponsors and youth programs to determine the best protocols moving forward that result in keeping kids in schools and providing them with the opportunity to participate in winter sports. He also told us that the board is the only building, that the administration building is the only building not up to basic entry control. And he provided a quote from Diode about getting that upgrade taken care of. That ends my report.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Doris on the committee of the whole report? All right, next up, the stance report. Steve, are you able to give us a report, or would you rather have Jason?
Steve, did you hear that? Are you able to give the stance report, or do you want me to defer that to Mr. Alexander? I think you're on mute.
Yeah. Is this better?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's much better.
Well, the only report I have to give is that the first report or meeting of the stance group is this Thursday. So we'll have a more thorough report for the December meeting.
All right. Thank you, Steve. It's good to see you. All right, next up then, this is the proper time for public forum, citizens' requests, comments related to agenda items. Is there anyone here that would wish to speak at this time? I see no one. So we'll move on to the discussion portion. First up, we have the superintendent evaluation. So let everybody know, I did put on the agenda at the end a exec session if there was anything anyone needed to comment on that could not be done in open session. So that would be anything that would be detrimental to Mr. Alexander's reputation. Otherwise, everything can be discussed openly. So that will be available if anybody needs to. I'll ask again at the end if anybody feels we need to go in so that we have an idea. So starting off, this went really well, I felt. Normally, I have it and I go over everything after everybody gives me everything and I have to collate and put it together, and this made it quite easy for me to do because I just sat back and let the NASB do it, and they sent me back everything put together, and then they also gave us an executive summary to look at as well. Now, something I kind of want to do a little differently than what we normally do. When I was reading through everybody's comments, and just so you know, I have no idea who said anything on these. There are some excellent comments that were made that I feel that we should talk about within each group. For example, in the first section, it's the mission, vision, and goals. One of the comments that I had seen was stakeholder engagement is crucial, and the district needs to amp up this effort from the top down if we are to see community support for the future projects, like consolidated elementary facility. That is one of the lowest board indicators, which for everyone who's listening, everything was scaled from a 1 to a 6, poor to excellent, 6 being excellent. And so even though the lowest board indicator, which was engages internal stakeholders and external stakeholders in the discussion of long-term plans and goals, that got a 5. So while it may be the lowest, it is not bad at all. But I thought this is a very important thing to bring up because stakeholder engagement is crucial, and it's very important to make sure we get the community involved regardless of what project we're dealing with. And now this year, because of COVID, and that was a theme that I saw throughout this in the comments, that because of COVID, it really affected everything that we were planning on doing, such as the strategic plan. Jason had gotten that set up to where we were going to be going through a strategic plan redo this fall, but we had to put that on hold until this following spring. Hopefully we can get that started again. And so, while we had to put that on hold, it's just another example of something he's done to be able to keep us moving forward. Did anybody have any comments they would like to make in regards to the mission, vision, and goals portion of the evaluation? The next section was the policy, and on that, the lowest board indicator was the provides public asset access to district policy, and which, when I got here tonight, I got on the website, and within 20 seconds, I had gone into that and found all of our policies listed through there. So I'm unsure why that was, and again, that was a 5, so it's not a really bad indicator, but had no trouble getting on there and finding where the policies were. If there was any problem with that, we could try and figure out an easier way. If anybody had any suggestions for that in order to put it on our website so it's easier for the public to find, then we can do that. One of the comments made was he is doing a complete overhaul of the district's policies with the help of our law firm and keeps the board updated on the progress. This was an unprecedented action that he had taken and shows forward thinking that he consistently demonstrates. In the past, I know we've always just taken sections each year or individual policies, and each month we go through another one. But Jason decided this year to go ahead and just hand it over to the law firm and let them completely go through everything, which I appreciate because that makes it a lot easier for us as a whole. Did anybody else have anything that they wanted to comment on in the policy area? Budget planning and management. This area, the lowest board indicator, it was a 5.2, so again, not terrible. Leads a collaborative board and administrative budget planning process to align resources with the district's mission, vision, and goals. And it's not that he does bad in that way at all. That just happened to be the lowest one that they had found. Really, no one had any issues with this area because budget planning is his strongest strength. So I'm not even gonna go through anything else on that. Did anybody have any comments about the budget section? Then moving on to educational leadership. Now this was the area that actually got me to wanting to walk through some of this because of a comment that I found in here that is fantastic. Of this area, the lowest board indicator, which was two things actually, came in at 4.5, was provides comprehensive coursework and opportunities to ensure college career readiness for every student and advocates for curriculum instruction that challenges each student. And I'm just going to read you this comment, which I really like. I often hear from stakeholders that we aren't doing enough to prepare our students for the future. Rather, we appear to only be working towards state standards and only meeting them, not exceeding, and still pushing for four-year college pathways. One request is for more challenging work beginning in the middle school and moving into college, as many parents have shown concern that their children aren't being challenged enough. Again, this points back to meeting standards and stopping there. I also hear from employers that the high school is pushing students away from potential career opportunities at home due to a push for four-year degrees. With the number of major employers in the area and the potential to pursue careers from general labor to marketing or human resources, the opportunities are endless and should be better explored by the district and made known to guidance counselors and parents in the district. I really agree with this, and ever since I've gotten on the board, I've wanted to make inroads to, instead of just concentrating on four-year college choices, to push people into a trade school, or not push them in, but guide them in that direction, or give them other opportunities that they may not be going into just a four-year school. And so this was one that, well, and I am from a trade school, and so of course I really support that idea. But this was a fantastic comment that I would like to look into when we have our retreat this coming spring. Again, it's something I'd like to look into. Then, did anybody have any comments as far as the educational section? Organizational and cultural leadership, the lowest indicator had been the ensures a purposeful and equitable recruiting and hiring process, promotes an environment where differing opinions and backgrounds are welcomed and embraced among staff and students. And those are both a 5. And again, this Mr. Alexander is extremely proactive in responding to conflicts or concerns within a district. He is strong enough to explain the district's position and the reason behind the position the district has established. The administration team that Jason leads is superb. You can feel the energy they possess for their students and teachers and work well together to accomplish district goals as a unit. This collaboration is a telltale sign of solid leadership from the top, a testament to the superintendent. we really didn't find any issues in that area. In the community relations section, lowest indicator was establishes a visible presence in the district and community. That was a 4.2, and I believe that was the lowest in the entire evaluation. And so I didn't pull any out of this because I wanted people to be able to make comments if they had any on their own. I know that this is a year again to where with COVID being visible in the district and being in community events, everything was a little more difficult this year, but hopefully we'll see things improving next year because things might hopefully open up. Did anybody have any comments they wish to make at this point on the community relations portion? Professional leadership. The lowest board indicator was provides an effective evaluation process which constructive feedback, and that was at a 4.7. There was a couple comments. He encourages continual professional development for all staff, including himself. He is always reassessing his personal and professional goals as well as the goals of his administrative team, and he believes in leading by example and strives to earn people's respect. And then also, one of the comments was plan a retreat for early next year for the board. So that is something we definitely want to see us get set up. Superintendent relations. The lowest board indicator, keep all board members informed with consistent and open communication. Again, one of the comments was Mr. Alexander likes to solve any issues with board members and is very good at opening communication with board members to find a common ground. This has been challenging, especially with the pandemic, as board members have different viewpoints on how to keep our kids safe and healthy and in school. Also, continue to be inclusive of all board members and keep them ahead of the public knowledge whenever possible. That was something that did come up, making sure that, which in this day and age with Facebook and texting, it's really hard to stay ahead of the curve on that one, but you have improved and gotten better at keeping us ahead of that whenever possible.
Hey, John.
Yes.
Real quick, can you explain the scale for people who are listening? I just had a community member ask me what the
Oh, sure.
scale is.
The scale again was 1 to 6, and with 1 being the lowest and 6 being the highest. So what they did is they took all of the board members' evaluations, and we had many different questions on a paper, and we had to grade each one of those on a scale of 1 to 6. And then they would take all of those and put them together. And once you divide that all up, you would see each question would end up with a 5.29 or a 5.33 or a 4.7. And so then within each one of these groups, they would take and show us the lowest one, which would show what we need to actually work on for that group. And so that's when I keep saying that with a 4.2 or 4.7, or even with a 5.0, these are not bad scores, because they're still, like a 3 would be middle of the road. And so we're still doing very well. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think just having some idea.
Okay.
Thank you.
And so now, let's see, we're on the board superintendent relations. and just communication, being open. So we had some mostly good, a few comments on just wanting to be informed before anything gets out to the public, which we all want to be able to know what's going on before we get hit up. So anyway, that's a little different than what we've done in the past. We do not like to go into executive session to discuss most of this because it needs to be handled in the public realm unless it is something that would be detrimental to Jason's character or reputation. But I also wanted to comment on a few of them because I really appreciated a few of the comments that were made, and feel that there's some things that we can carry over into the retreat this next spring when we get together in order to figure out the goals for what we want Jason to accomplish over the next year, which is separate from our strategic plan that we're hoping to get started in spring as well. Did anybody have any comments, questions, concerns, or anything with the evaluation that you would like to discuss at this point in open session? And also, is there anybody that wanted to go into exec session to discuss anything in regards? And this is not a voting meeting. We will be voting on this in December. This is just for discussion purposes and giving everybody a chance to talk about it. So,
Well, I'd like to say I think that that budget is his strength, and it's been really good to have someone with those solid skills that you feel like you really trust. I think staff trust him, we trust him, so I think that's really good. I would say that moving forward, I'd like to see if they can personalize the evaluation form a little bit. There were a lot of questions about curriculum that are handled by Jackie that I thought were difficult to answer because they get taken care of, but they're not really his responsibility. So, but I'm very pleased with the job he's doing for the district.
and yes, I have been talking with NASB, and they've been asking me to find out what they can do to change. If we stick with them for the next year and do the same thing, how can we change it to be more fitting to our district? And so I will pass that on. Anyone else?
I would also say that it was difficult to do a superintendent evaluation this year because of COVID, because some of them are very specific to interacting with people on a day-to-day basis. The other thing I will say is I rarely give someone an excellent because I don't think you're perfect yet, but I think you're working on it and doing a great job for us. So.
I would just like to say, I think, during COVID, unprecedented times, you've done an excellent job in leading the district, making some tough decisions, and every day it's fluid. I know that, and you keep us informed, and appreciate that.
Anyone else? I will say that when I go through these, I start off with a 3. I'm with you, Janet. That is where I start, and most of what somebody does is a 3. And then if they do a really good job, they get a 4. So to get even higher than that, which you always need to leave room for improvement. And if you just keep giving them top of the line, then you're never going to be able to improve. And so I shouldn't say 3. I guess this was up to 6. So I think most of his good things were just a 4. And he got a few 5s and I think maybe 1 6. But that doesn't mean you weren't doing fantastic. It just means that that's just how I grade everything. So I may have actually lowered your score some, and I apologize. But well, that was all I wanted to do on this point. Now that you've got it, You can take it home, look over, and think about what we've done. Again, did anybody need to go into exec session for this particular evaluation?
I would say no on my part.
Okay. Hearing no one else, then we will go ahead and move on to the next, which is the middle school principal position. I also have that set up because it has to do with personnel, exec session. If anyone feels they need to go into exec session to discuss anything that would be detrimental to anyone personnel-wise that would be discussing, if it was going to be a negative, otherwise we'll discuss everything in public. So, having said that, Mr. Alexander, would you like to tell us about the middle school principal position?
I sure would, and before I start, just thank you for the evaluation process. I do take it to heart. I think it's a great process. I will also say, I agree with everything you said. This year has been a challenging year for that particular item, evaluation, because there's been, let's just be honest, there hasn't been a whole lot but COVID this year. And so it's been a challenging year from that standpoint, but I appreciate the comments, and I do appreciate the idea of more personalizing the evaluation instrument, because you're right. Jackie is a huge part of everything that takes place in this district, and we try and make sure to keep each other informed as much as possible when it refers to one thing or another, but there's no doubt that curriculum and instruction is her strength, and that budgeting is probably mine. So we try not to make that a secret. We try and work together as much as possible to make everything flow. So I do totally agree with everything that was said, so thank you.
Am I on mute?
No, you aren't on mute.
Oh, I didn't ask Steve. Steve, do you have any comments you wanted to make on?
Do you want me to go back? No.
That's okay.
Okay.
So moving on to the middle school principal position, item 7.2 on the agenda. Basically, we're at a point, obviously, with Mr. Jarash's retirement announcement this evening. Again, I would like to say thank you to him for keeping us informed of his intentions all the way along his decision-making process, and giving us plenty of opportunity to discuss this about what our plans were. And obviously, with his retirement, that leaves a vacancy. And so, as we thought about that and discussed that amongst ourselves greatly, I think one of these items that you evaluate me on is professional leadership and trying to find the right people to lead this district. And I would just say that in that position that will be open, I think I would echo Mr. Drosh's statements about Mr. Hakey and how strongly he feels that Mr. Hakey is the person that we need to move into that position. And I couldn't agree more. I think Mr. Hakey has been a terrific, he's had 2 years now to learn from Mr. Drosh and spend time figuring out, getting his feet on the ground and figuring out everything that is all middle school entailed. And he's done an awesome job. I think he's garnered a terrific amount of respect from the staff there. I think he's garnered a terrific amount of respect from our administrative team. He has fit in very nicely. So in that vacancy, we would like to make the recommendation that we advance Mr. Hakey to the head principal position, and then we advertise for the assistant principal position that will become vacated by Mr. Hakey moving in. So again, that would be our recommendation. If there's a need to discuss that in executive session, we sure can, but we feel Mr. Hakey has done a terrific job, and would like to make that move to promote him to the head principal position and then open the assistant principal position. So.
Jason, I would agree.
Concern that I would have, and it shows up on the superintendent evaluation, that you ensure a purposeful and equitable recruiting and hiring process, and also that we don't set a precedent that it's just an automatic move just because you're in a certain position. It has nothing to do with the person, it just has to do with the position. That we maintain appropriate hiring practices, and that we just don't set a precedent for automatic movement. I do like the idea of promoting from within, but I would prefer that there's actually a process that you go through before you do that.
I would agree with Janet.
Can you tell us why you would forego doing a hiring process and just hire without posting that?
I think there are multiple reasons why we would. And just for clarification's sake, for people who are listening out there, there's no legal obligation and no policy obligation to advertise and hire. But as Janet alluded to, and I agree, there is a process. There is a part of a process that's important whenever you have an opening to consider. In this particular situation, with Mr. Hankey's contributions to, and his patience, I mean, he's applied before, and I think most importantly, he was willing to learn from his first application, reapplied the second time, was hired, and he's proven himself over the 2 years that he's been here in every area possible. Predominantly in his position as assistant principal, he deals a lot with student discipline, and he's handled that marvelously. Obviously, there's many times when you're in a student discipline situation where parents may not necessarily agree, and he's never hesitated to meet and talk to parents. The other reason is I think he's brought to the table a sense of renewed spirit amongst us as an administrative team. He's been a great addition for us, but most importantly, some of the innovative practices that he's established at the middle school. One, first and foremost, is his social media presence, where he communicates with the public extensively via social media through his The Beatrice Middle School Instagram site. Constantly updating people, showing pictures of what's going on. And like it or not, social media is probably the area where we are able to communicate with people as quickly and show them what's going on in our schools as anything. And so he's been very strategic about that. He's been very upfront about that. And then I think in the area of staff development and leadership, he's shown his skills and abilities to earn the respect of the staff. That quite frankly, when he came in, he's younger than most of them, and that's always a challenge when you are a person in a leadership position that's younger than the majority of your staff. It's a challenge to get those people sometimes in your corner or be willing to do the things you'd like to see them do and make suggestions on improvement for them. So he's done that with grace, and he's done it with integrity, which I think has earned him that right to be recommended for that position in the head principal position.
Is there any kind of precedence within our district for hiring from, not just from within, but hiring without putting it out to the community, bidding the job? Or is there any legal precedent saying that we cannot do that? I know you commented on legal, but.
No, in discussion with the attorney, there's no legal precedence that requires it. In many cases, it is best practice, especially in positions where you have a highly competitive nature. And in this particular situation, with the position of principal, it's totally up to the discretion of the individuals in the practice, completing the practice of the hiring scheme. So we feel very comfortable in that we would be able to recommend him for the position of being the next head principal of the middle school. But if it's the direction from the board, they would rather see us open that up and pursue other candidates, we can definitely do so, discuss those candidates, and if none of them rise to the level that Mr. Hakey is, then we could recommend his promotion from that standpoint as well. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. I'm stuck between agreeing with Eric and agreeing with Janet to where I like to see being moved up from within. I also like to see us always have it out there so it's open and giving everybody the same choice. I also believe that I hire you and your job is to hire from there on in. And so that's where my quandary comes from. And,
Well, I also think from the standpoint of the candidate pool, many times when there's an internal candidate, the question becomes, is that a fair process for your candidate pool? And in this particular case, I would say that Mr. Hakey is a very strong candidate in our candidate pool. And so knowing that we have a strong candidate, known commodity, as member trustee said, we know what we're going to get when we make that promotion. And so for our candidate pool, to put everybody through that process and then know what we're going to begin with as compared to just looking for an assistant principal, I think that's another part of the reason. I mean, there's multifaceted reasons why we would make that decision. But again, if the board would rather that we open it up and choose and seek out candidates, we can do that.
I guess my opinion is, you've worked with this administration for, a number of years now. Your comfort level is very high with them. I think, I would like to see more, your guys' discretion on this, because again, it's going to be part of the administrative team. In my opinion, I believe, in making this potential move, then opening up the assistant principal job, which typically is probably a higher, a larger candidate pool, or even potentially more internal candidates than, again, where we see the same kind of tract of grooming and working with that person as they move up. And, when the next person retires, then there's a potential move up from that direction. So, I don't know. My recommendation is to, continue to move in the same path that Mr. Alexander is presenting to us, versus going through this process.
I would also say that, Janet, I think you make a great point, and I want to make sure that I validate that, because I think there is the possibility that those types of situations could become precedent. However, I don't think this fits that situation, and I don't think that would be the direction that myself or Dr. Nielsen would ever want to take the district, is establish a precedence that that was the protocol. I think.
Right, and like I said, it has nothing to do with a person, it has to do with the process, not the actual candidate, because I do agree, I think Mr. Hakey's done a great job. I just don't want the district to get into a situation where a year down the road, you have another position come open, and that's not necessarily the person you want to put in that position. And they come back and say, but you did it that time, and you did it that time. So, it's as much, are you setting a precedent when you're doing it?
I understand, and an example I can give, without trying to give too many details, is in the position of our assistant principalship that Mr. Hakey was hired for, we did have internal candidates that applied for that position. We didn't end up hiring them. And so we are very conscientious about making sure that it's got to be the right fit, and it's a promotion that we feel comfortable making before we would do that. So.
But you make the exact point that you didn't hire within, you opened it up and you found the best possible candidate. So in this case, why don't we open it up, see if there is someone even better than Mr. Hakey, although I will say that he's very good, but why would we not at least try?
Would we be opening up the position for head middle school principal or assistant middle school principal?
The principal position, the position that's open. I just think we should do the same thing every time. I think we get into, we're going to create problems down the road. If this time we don't open it up, next time we do open it up, I would prefer it be open.
Can I speak, or is that out of line?
It's up to,
Well, are we at that point in the meeting?
Oh, we've already passed through that.
Oh, forget it.
Could I make a comment?
Please, Steve.
I just have a thought on this, that every situation is gonna have to be different. Because there may be some times when we have a really good feeling about somebody we already have on staff. And even though we go through a hiring process on somebody new from outside the system, when we get them into their position, we don't know how they're gonna perform. Whereas in this case, we do have a pretty good idea how they're gonna perform. And I know that doesn't, all hiring has to be done any particular way. But I think we just need to have
You're cutting out, Steve. Okay, I think we can hear you now.
I don't know what you heard and what you didn't.
We heard, I think, most of it. You're talking
Okay.
about, we didn't know, you don't know who you're going to get, or what you're going to get.
I think we have to have this spread.
Did you catch that?
I caught some of it.
Okay.
If we can,
Yes, go ahead, Steve.
You're kind of going in and out, Steve.
I just think we have to have discretion of being able to make that decision within our administrative team and the board.
One of the other points he brought up is that Mr. Jarash was hired from within as well. He went
That
from
was,
middle
I was gonna
school
answer your question.
assistant principal to the, or he went from high school assistant principal, sorry, to middle school principal. Yes.
And I guess I think it's appropriate if Mr. Drosh could.
I agree.
I was just gonna answer his question as to do with precedent, but Dr. Baker asked me to apply for the middle school position. Dave Kraus was also interested, it wasn't opened up. We had a meeting with the staffs and Dr. Baker made a decision.
Okay.
So that was not opened up to the public, it was decided to be moved from within.
And look how well that worked out.
And I didn't mean to interrupt, I just wanted to answer your
And
question.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No.
I really don't like to open up, other than in the public section, the meeting to anyone that's not on board.
Well, I think, also looking at just, in my place of work, we've had a number of different times where we've, hired from within, outside of the organization and so forth, and, a number of people worked out just awesome, but then we've also had staff within, we've promoted within, and I will tell you that so far in my, experience, they have been the best, whether they're directors, supervisors, whatever that may be, because it's a known entity. You've had that on-the-job kind of interview for 2 to 3 years, whatever that may be, and you understand where that person's coming from, what their character is, how they function within the administrative team, with the teachers, with the students, and so forth. So, I understand we're Janet and Doris. Do we set a precedent here? But I think I think you do go by a case-by-case basis, and I think this is a case where, again, in my opinion, it would be a strong recommendation for myself to move forward with that.
Yeah, I knew we had done it before, wasn't sure where it was. Glad to know where now that had occurred.
as long as you can be assured that you are following good hiring practices overall, and that we don't have any legal liability in the future. You know, so as long as you can guarantee that, I'm okay with that. Because again, this said middle school principal position. It said nothing about Mr. Hakier or, you know, it has to do with not just this position, but any position that we ensure to the public that we are following the equal opportunity employment practices and good hiring practices consistently and fairly.
I can assure you that legally we are on solid ground. According
Okay,
to the
that-
very law.
I hope the media got that on tape. I want to have that in the record.
I completely understand, and I hope, Andrew, I hope you understand where everybody's comments are coming from tonight, because I think you're just looking out for the best interest of the district, which is completely understandable, as you should be, and as I would be. And I mean, in no means would I ever want to put us in any type of legal jeopardy. So the other question would be policy. Do we have any policy-related issues that would prohibit this? And there are none. No policy-related issues either.
So do you need a vote from us to move forward, or are you just looking for comment?
Well, what I would recommend, I mean, it's President Zimmerman's meeting, but I would recommend from this standpoint that what I would say is we were wanting to make that recommendation tonight and move forward with it so we could use the month of December as an advertisement month. Hopefully be able to, depending on how the world is in our time of Christmas, be able to come back and get some interviews lined up for the assistant principal position and move forward with that. But I would recommend probably that this be on the agenda as an action item, because there is some differences of opinion, and have a vote on it at the December meeting at this point as to how the board wants to move forward. That would be my recommendation, because right now it is just a discussion point. You've had an opportunity for, unless there's further comment, I don't want to take away anybody's chance to comment, but there's been opportunity for discussion at this point, and we can certainly put it on the December agenda to have it be voted on. That way it's a formal action item and we move forward. That sounds good to everybody. That's what proper procedure would be.
I like that idea. And being as I hire you to take care of everything underneath of this position, I will allow you to make that suggestion and go with that too. So, did anybody else wish to have any discussion or comment at this time on this subject? Then I would go ahead and bring that back in December as an action item, and we can get that taken care of. Okay. Next up, we are in the action portion. The approval of the proposal from Diode Technology. Can I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the proposal from Diode Technologies in the amount of $6,661.32.
I have a motion from Doris. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Aaron. All right, did you have anything, Mr. Alexander, you wanted to tell us on that?
No, I think we covered it pretty much in the committee of the whole agenda, but basically what it takes full care of is the security, access monitoring on the front of this building. So we would make sure that we're up to date on our access control here on the administrative building.
How will that work again with, I know you explained this a little bit in the last meeting, but how does that work with city council meetings, the access from the outside?
It could work multiple ways. We could give them key fobs to that, or we could send them a text message and they could use their phones to open it.
Gotcha.
So probably what we'll do is just communicate with them and work with them on what they prefer and set it up that way.
Any other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, can I have your votes, please?
Steve, what's your vote on the approval of the proposal from Diode?
I am for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, then 7 yes votes. Next up, administrator's report. Mrs. Timmerman, you are going to tell us about the preschool.
I am. So, it seems like everything's heavy tonight, so I'm trying to get in here and enjoy school like it is. So I tried to go through and I was going to do the top 10 things that we've heard in preschool lately because, kids do say the darndest things. And when you're at preschool, you never know what's going to come out of their mouth. Like today, we sent a little kid home when she walked out. She goes, "Bye, suckers!" Like, "Oh, come back here. You probably aren't that sick." But every day you don't know what is going to bring. But what we do know is that early childhood education is such a major part of the development of children. So we want to say thank you for doing that. So today, I don't know if you noticed, we did have a duck come to school. So if you've never seen a duck on a leash with a bow tie and diapers, you just have to come to preschool and see it. We've had 2 successful classes go through distance learning. Unfortunately, we've had to quarantine 2 classes because there was a positive case in the classroom, and so Public Health Solution had asked all the other children to be in there. The awesome thing, well, whatever, I taught the first distance learning class because there was someone in the room that couldn't do it, and so I had the opportunity to model on what we wanted that to do, which I thought was very exciting. Number 1, I love technology. But number 2, if I'm going to talk the talk, I need to walk the walk. So I was able to model what that distance learning was going to look like in preschool and how we wanted that to go. Great feedback from parents saying our children continue to learn and our kids were engaged and loved doing it. We even had a Halloween party over Zoom. So it was a lot of fun to get the kids involved and then to see each other and to work together in the classroom. Hopefully on Thursday we'll have everybody back in the preschool and be able to maintain everyone in the school. Another great thing that's happening this year is we're doing speedy speech. So our SLP is going to the classrooms and pulling kids to work on those few little sounds that maybe aren't there, so we don't have to refer a child all the way to speech and get the entire process, but maybe just help. The few hints that SLPs can give are amazing. We've been short-staffed almost all year, and everyone at the preschool has just been amazing, just bending over backwards and helping each other. So here's my other one. Including Mrs. Carty and myself, we are the janitors right now. And the other day she was out in the office, she goes, "Missy, Missy," and I go out and she's holding the vacuum in 2 parts. We just do what we got to do and we just keep going. But the staff has just been great. Shorthanded classrooms, jump into classroom to classroom, just covering so we can do what's best for kids. Parent-teacher conferences, we moved this year to the end of October. We didn't do what elementary did. Preschool has to do what's called Teaching Strategies Gold, which is our assessment. Our assessment part is over October 31st. So we wanted to be able to report those findings to parents. Teachers absolutely loved it. They were able to know kids better. They were able to share really what development of children are instead of within the first few weeks being able just to say, well, you don't know if they're really struggling or if it was just the adjustment time. So we really got to know kids and be able to share information better. It's going to be hard to talk parents and to teachers back into doing live face-to-face ones because they really like doing Zoom. It seemed like it was more comfortable for everyone. But we miss that interaction with parents. With that being said, parent communication, even though parents aren't in the building, I feel like parents know what's going on. Our staff has done an amazing job with Seesaw and communicating with Seesaw and also Zoom, getting parents in. We're doing lots of Facebook Lives. We did our Halloween party, I Facebook Live that. If we have big information, we do walk around Wednesdays. So I just walk around the preschool with my live Facebook and just talk to parents and let them know what we expect or what's coming up or new things. We've had great feedback with that. I have to tell the story because I got these nice little face masks for our teachers because you lose so much of communication when you don't see mouths and little kids. So I had a teacher come in, she's crying. And she goes, "You will never guess what I just did." I said, "Hard telling." She goes, "My para was on the floor absolutely bawling when I was reading a story." I go, "Why?" She goes, "I had my mask on like that." So it's just part of it. And I'm like, "Oh, honey, that's really not going to give you any good." But she had it on her eyes instead of her mouth. So the masks are great for the adults, but our kids are wearing them, and it's going very well, I would say. And the last thing, I just want to thank you for your continued support of early childhood education. being able to see our little kiddo that wasn't walking coming into preschool now is tottering down the hallways and it's strolling fast, running into walls all over with his walker. Kids that aren't talking, the amount of children that we've moved from not being able to use the restroom to being able to use the restroom, not putting words together to putting sentences and conversations together. People really don't understand the benefits and the amount of growth that we see in children when they come into our preschool. So thank you very much for your continued support. One of my teachers said, our consistency is their freedom. And I think that's a huge thing to think of. When we have our consistent schedules, our consistent routines, it gives kids freedoms because they understand what they're doing. So that's kind of my new thing. Our consistency gives them freedom because it really does. So is that 5 minutes?
5:20.
Oh, I told them 5 minutes. So do you guys have any questions for, when you at the end of the meeting, it's kind of like, Any questions for me?
I do have to tell you, I was talking to a little girl whose mother is a teacher in the district, and when they were doing remote learning, they were using Seesaw. Her father is a teacher in another district, and they do not have Seesaw, and her comment was, his life would be so much easier if they just had Seesaw.
It is, what we're trying to do with preschool is make it so it's not worksheets, so it's still our belief of hands-on learning, which is difficult because it's really easy to try to count through things and put it, but how do we help parents understand that learning is all the time and it doesn't have to be a pen and paper? So it is easier just to say, here's something, but Seesaw has given us a whole lot of opportunities. And I really like working on stuff like that. So when I got to teach and I got to create my own Seesaw things, I was super excited. Any other questions?
Thanks for lighting things up this evening.
Well, I tried. Thanks, guys.
We can always count on Missy to lighten things up. She does a terrific job and guides a great staff over there. So thank you for the report.
And now on that note,
Don't sound so excited, John.
Mr. Alexander has the superintendent report.
All right, I will try and be brief, but I know there are several topics that we are going to, you may have questions on as we get to the end of this. So first and foremost, congratulations to Board Member Janet Byers and Board Member Lisa Pieper for their re-election in the latest polls. Almost as controversial as a presidential race, but not quite, and we're thankful for that. So we are glad to have you back, and we look forward to working with you in the years to come. Also, a welcome to Eric Book, who is not with us this evening, but was the candidate that will be replacing Mr. Winter's position. So congratulations and thank you for being willing to serve our students in our district. Greatly appreciate it. Also, Cole mentioned that all the fall activities came to an end, and I would say a strong finish by all of our activities. And I just want to extend a huge congratulations to our students for making their way through a tremendous amount of uncertainty. And when it would have been easier maybe to give up and say, I'm not going to participate in this because it makes no sense, and we never know from one week to the next week what we're going to be doing, and do I really want to commit myself when I don't know whether I'm going to be able to compete, or whether the other school's going to call off, or whether we're going to be quarantined, or whatever the case may be. Our students stepped up to the occasion. And I was so proud of seeing our students compete at state tennis, and compete at state volleyball, or in sub-state volleyball, and compete the way they did at the end of the football season. Although it hadn't maybe been the season they wanted, they finished strong. And all of our activities across the board, I just think our cross-country teams, our golf team, all of our kids, maybe we didn't necessarily win the state championship, but I think we won a lot of hearts from the standpoint of how we competed. I don't know how many kids are listening out there, but I will echo this in saying that so many times in life, it's not how many times you get knocked down, but how many times you get back up that counts. And our kids got back up every time this year. From the beginning, when they were uncertain whether or not they were going to have a season, they got back up and they went after the next opponent with everything that they had. So I'm just very proud of that. I'm proud of our kids, and it was a pleasure to watch them all. I hope we get to do the same thing this winter. That's yet to be determined, but congratulations to you, Colt, on your successes. thank you for representing Beatrice in a positive fashion. With that said, a few changes in scheduling. The Nebraska Association of School Board State Conference is now all virtual. So that's been, with the governor's new directed health measures that came out today, they have made that change so there will be no live conference in Omaha this year. Quick update, the negotiations season has started. We met once to basically set the array, discuss the ground rules, and discuss the items to be negotiated. Our next meeting is slated for this Wednesday, and our focus at this point will strictly be the extra duty salary schedule, which we haven't addressed in the past 3 years. So that will be our starting point, and that works, I think, in terms of giving us some direct focus on what we want to accomplish in the next couple of meetings as everybody else is talking about those things. With that, I'm going to really enlighten the meeting and turn to the next topic, which is COVID. And you've not heard enough about that lately, so I just want to take some time, and I appreciate the transparent discussion we had at our committee of the whole meeting. And I appreciate the transparent discussion we had about tonight, and I want to have that same opportunity with the COVID topics as we transition into this part of our meeting. As of today, I want to give you some facts. I want to tell you what, in visitation with other schools, that I heard today from many other schools, and then I want to just give you a chance to ask some questions. So, first the facts. As of Friday, which is some of the most updated information we have, and some of it is today, but I'm going to say Friday, so I'm most accurate. We have 15 active cases in our district. This number continues to increase daily, and we don't see that changing at this point. And I know you all are all aware of what's happening with the increased numbers of cases, so I don't need to beat that like a dead horse. But
Jason, is that just students or students?
that's 6 staff members and 9 students. So that's where we're at right now. We do anticipate. We know we have some people that are waiting test results that we could find out as early as tomorrow. It could change that number. So again, this changes by hour, day to day. So, but that's what we're working with right now. As of Friday, and again, I go back to that date because that's the most recent information we have. As of Friday, we have 134 students in quarantine or absent in the district. So most of those quarantined. 134 in the district that are quarantined. Again, that's substantially up from what we've seen over the course of the last month. So the indicators that everybody's giving us are truly indicators of what we're seeing in our school system as well. We have 2 employees of mid-states that are currently quarantined, and I think that's important for us to understand because there's only so many bus drivers, there's only so many substitute teachers, there's only so many people that can get kids to where they need to be. So some of our decisions that happen are also based on items like that. The ripple effects of COVID are pretty extensive. So those are kind of the facts that we're dealing with right now. And again, as I give them to you, please understand that that could be drastically different tomorrow morning when we come to school, or Wednesday, or by Thursday. So, any questions about those facts? Okay, so in visitation with some other schools, I will tell you that today I was on a Zoom call with the Trailblazers, the Trailblazer Conference. I was on a phone call with an area superintendent and 2 other calls with other area superintendents about what they're seeing in their school. And the big question is, right now, what's everybody thinking about doing? Are you staying in person? Are you going 50-50? Are you looking at going complete remote learning? Because, as again, that's where the indicators tell us things are going. So on the Trailblazer Conference call today with Ralston, Nebraska City, Platteview, Wahoo, and Plattsmouth, they're all facing the same challenges we are. So we're not isolated in that. I think that's probably true across the state. I think all schools are probably wrestling with a lot of these decisions we are. If they're not, they're lucky. But I would say that's probably pretty much the theme across the state from what we hear from our public health director, who's also in communication with the public health director spread across the state. Ralston and Nebraska City are currently in their Tier 3 mode of operation, or their 50-50 mode. In other words, 50% of the students are on campus every other day, and on the opposite days, 50% of the students are on campus and attending in person. So those two schools have already made the transition to their next Tier 3. There are many other schools that are thinking about that. I did visit with another area's superintendent whose name at this time, or the school, I'll just keep unnamed at this point, but they are also considering going to the 50-50 mode next week, starting next week. They want to give their staff time to prepare. They're discussing this tonight at their board meeting, and they want to look at how much time they need to prepare to do that and give their public enough time. So that's in the works. There's also another superintendent in the area that's in the same situation. I think the reality is, all the indicators tell us it's a matter of time before we ourselves head that direction. We've been saying that for a long time, trying to get people to understand that we need them to prepare themselves for that next step and be ready for it. And you know, there are a couple of key factors that are key decision-making factors for us. One is, first and foremost, our staff. We've got to have staff to teach students. That's no secret. We've got to have substitute teachers to teach students. So we're looking at that we're tracking that very closely. That's going to be a key factor in us determining the next step that we talk about. We talk about this every morning. The other key factor is going to be students in quarantine and how long before we reach a threshold where we are either already basically almost remote learning. And does it make sense to go there, or 50-50, and on the basis of that? So that's another key point that we're taking into consideration. So that's why we're tracking those quarantine numbers. And then the final factor, I think, is, you know, at what point, because we know we have these kids in school, and we're fortunate enough that we have the ability to require them to wear masks all day, which is, I don't know whether it's an end-all be-all or not, everybody has their opinion on that, but we do have that ability to keep them in that likelihood all day. Well, these kids also have to eat lunch, and they also have to have mask breaks throughout the course of the day. They still have to have the opportunity to be kids. And at some point, because of the community spread that has now gotten into the schools, when do we become what would be considered a super spreader possibility? And so we're trying to, there is no magic number for that. There is no magic percentage. But we're trying to gauge that very carefully, because the other interesting facts that we found out this morning in our incident command team meeting is that the hospital is completely full. All 8 negative airway flow unit chambers are full. The ICU is halfway full and becoming full. But what we're hearing from the hospital, and if you recall back to all the meetings we've had, we've talked about that's going to be a key indicator for us, because that's one of the factors we have to take into consideration, because we do not want to end up in a situation where we have students that need to go to the hospital or teachers that need to go to the hospital and they have nowhere to go. And we're very close to that point. In our incident command meeting this morning, and Eric, you could probably give us more information than I can, but in our incident command meeting this morning, we found out that the hospital COVID wing is full, the ICU is full, and they are very short on personnel themselves because of quarantine measures that have taken place there. So all of those dynamics are key factors in the decisions that we make in the next steps. So we're watching all those things very closely. And I think that kind of gives you an idea of what we're dealing with within our school, kind of gives you an idea of what other schools are talking about around us. And I know you watch the news, so you're aware of that. But I would just open it up at this point for questions that you might have as to anything that's on your mind. And we'll try and answer it. But I would also, Dr. Nielsen we're working on this about 8 hours a day every day, so if not more. So she can answer these questions along with me too.
I guess I'm curious about what tier 3 looks like. You know, we have this guide and it's constantly changing because COVID is constantly changing our lives. But what is the benefit of going to a tier 3 versus I don't want to go completely remote, but what's the benefit of doing tier 3 when everyone's still in the school at some point and you're still having staffing issues versus going, what do those tiers look like right now?
I think that probably primarily the biggest benefit to tier 3, and again, as we wrote these plans in July, when we had an idea of what we thought we were going to be dealing with, but our idea is completely different. But I think the benefit of tier 3 for the most part is that we still maintain 50% of the students meeting with teachers 50% of the week. That's the biggest benefit that I see.
I would say the same. I do, though, understand that there may be a staffing struggle at that point in time too. Because if staff are needing to stay home with their younger kids, and I know our administrators have kind of surveyed their staff to say, okay, which ones will need to stay home and which ones will I need to get subs for. So that is a concern with tier 3. But you know, the nice thing is when we've talked about some of our special populations, the special education students and our EL students, we are still finding ways to service them in building, no matter if we are tier 3 or tier 4, because we know these are some of our students who we cannot, there's already a gap. We have to continue to have them in person so we can continue to close that gap. And so those are some things that we've been working through, whether it is tier 3 or tier 4, and I'm excited about some of the possibilities that we still have in place for some students that really will need that extra support and that guidance from day to day. But, you know, I'm gonna say, I think tier 3 and tier 4, they're both not good options. You know, and that's the thing, is no one wants to go to those options, but there are some struggles with tier 3. There are some great advantages to tier 3 too, because you do still see the students off and on. You do still see them. But one of the things that we have pushed out with tier 4 is that we still need to Zoom with our kids. We still need to check on them, and we still need to make sure that we are the instructors of the content, because we're the professionals. We are the people that have been trained in this content. We've been studying this content. We can deliver this content. So it still is making that connection through Zoom. It's just not as good as having them in person.
I think, you know, in my opinion, you know, to kind of echo some of Jason's comments, you know, the hospital system is beginning to become stressed locally, and even, you know, when we look at obviously a large, you know, transfer population where we would typically send, you know, patients is Lincoln, which we're not able to do that very easily right now. So that's causing, you know, a lot of stress amongst, you know, doctors and families and patients and so forth. You know, so that's one piece of it. I think the other side of it is, you know, we want to keep our kids in school, and we understand that. You know, I agree with, you know, Jason and Jackie as far as, you know, I think one of the triggers has to be staffing. You know, if we can continue to, you know, have teachers to teach our kids, great. Is there also a consideration to look at, can it be building specific? You know, for example, if we have a, you know, which I guess I've seen in some numbers, a little higher outbreak in high school, you know, that may be easier population to go to remote versus, and sorry, Colt, not to put you, you know, but I could just see that a little bit easier than a grade school or preschool. But again, you know, it's weighing that balance, you know, what's the best for all the kids, and I understand that, but I don't know if that's even a consideration. I guess personally, the tier 3, I don't know what that gains you a whole lot of. You know, not only, I understand you decrease the capacity, but then you know, you've got remote, you've got some kids in school, so also looking at the teachers and administrators is, you know, that's just double duty, which I know they're already doing, and we all appreciate that, and it's a different time, but I think that puts a lot more stress there as well. And I think, you know, going remote, and I'll just be, you know, selfish here, that puts a lot of stress continuing on our healthcare system. Because we're doing the exact same things that you're doing when surveying your teachers. If we go to remote, you know, teachers that have kids, what do you have to do? We're doing the same thing in our organization as trying to determine, okay, if this happens, what's our staffing level become? But again, I don't know what the right answer is, but is that a possibility to look at building by building to make that determination?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it, because I would have forgot to say that, but yes, that's a conversation we actually had this morning, is in looking at the details. Is it possible to go remote with a certain group if that's necessary and leave the rest of the buildings operating as normal? And the answer to that would be yeah. Very similar to what we did with Lincoln at the start of the year.
So what triggers a new tier? Right now, we're hearing that the hospital's full. We've got 130 some people quarantined and 15 active cases. I mean, what's the trigger that you're going to say, okay, we have to go to the next tier? Or how quickly does that happen? Is it going to be just immediate and we'll be scrambling? Or what does that kind of look like for the district, for people who are trying to prepare?
Good question. And I would say in regards to how it happens, we want to try and give as much notice as possible. I would think that right now a key factor for us as we look into this week will be, it's interesting because Mondays and Thursdays or Fridays seem to be when we get the most increase in the cases that we're dealing with. And I think that's probably because a lot of people go get tested on Monday and then they get the result back on Wednesday, if not sooner. So then that dictates how the Thursday outlook looks. But I think the triggering factor, to be quite honest with you, for us really right now comes down to staffing. That's going to be the key factor. And when Bonnie tells us she cannot fill teaching positions, she doesn't have enough substitutes, then we'll have to look at how that impacts that building and can we adjust somehow, and if that's not possible, then we'll have to probably close that building. So that, our biggest key factor is our staff.
Jason, do you foresee the state coming down with any mandate like they did last spring? Has there been any indication from Bloomstead or?
No, not at this point. I think it would have to get really bad for that to happen. Now,
I agree, I'm just curious.
yeah. It'll be interesting to see after January, after the official transition of our presidency, what happens on a nationwide basis. So that could be a possible triggering point too. But at this point, I'd say no.
One of the points about staffing that is interesting, okay, so if I have maybe the flu, or if I have a different virus, usually I'm out for 1 to 2 days, or, I'm back on that 3rd day usually. But when you're talking about COVID, you now have 10 days of isolation, 14 days of quarantine. And the nice thing is, since teachers are essential workers, as long as they are not symptomatic or going in to get tested, they can come back to work as long as they are wearing a mask and, practice some isolation pieces and make sure that they are social distancing. But otherwise, if I have it and I'm at home for 10 days, that's a long period of time to cover for that staff member too. So those are some things that we look at. It's not finding a couple staff members just to cover for 2 days. It's finding them to cover for possibly 10 working days, but maybe it's less, 8, but it's still a long period of time.
The governor did come out with new mandates today, especially regarding extracurricular activities.
Yes.
He did, and we watched that press conference this morning.
Isn't that fun to do that like every day?
It literally, and I don't mean to exaggerate this, but literally it is about the only thing we get done outside of approving a few reports on the end of the year, the GMS thing, websites that we have to approve and do reports on. So yes, the governor's conference this morning was important. It did change the DHMs for indoor activities to 25%. So currently we're working backwards through that because we kind of had that set last week and now this is in place. Part of that conference call I was on this morning with the Trailblazer Conference Schools was looking at our protocols, and so we're getting those set right now as to how many spectators can be in events, to watch those events.
And didn't it state that the student or the child participating in the extracurricular activities has only members of their immediate household can also be at those activities?
That was
Did I read
by
that
the
correctly?
age. Yep. Household members, family members only. So, obviously, you know, we have to look at, what we have to do now is we have to look at the 1,200 capacity, seating capacity of our gymnasium and work our way backwards into that and be ready to come out with how many spectators will be able to attend on the basis of that and meeting the 25% capacity.
And did they say family members only or household? Immediate household?
I think it's a household.
It's
I think it was household,
Mhm.
yeah.
So we're working with all those, and again, every school is working through these things, and I feel it's nice to be able to talk to our Trailblazer Conference schools and work with them through this too. So you get to hear what's going on in everybody's school.
So the first goal is to get to Thanksgiving.
Yes.
We made it to October 16th, now we want to get to Thanksgiving. right?
So what is, like Ralston, you know, I think they're a little higher positivity rate in, you know, Omaha metro area, and you just see that, or what are they doing right now?
They're at the 50-50 right now. And I'm not-
District-wide?
District-wide.
Right.
And I don't know if they did that last week or the week before. I know this is Nebraska City's second week, and I think Ralston's first week, but don't quote me on that. So.
Now, with the 50-50, are you doing, the students are in class 2 days a week, and then the other 3 days, are they watching by computer, or are they just on their own?
Both.
Both.
They'll be doing both. They'll be remote for some of it, but then there are also the activities that are posted on Google Classroom that will help reinforce the learning that's going on. So it'll be a combination.
So on that 5th day, is the teacher remote learning with everyone, or is it just a work day for the teachers, or?
Wednesday will be we'll definitely do the planning part of it, but it will be a remote learning day. It'll be kind of a check-in day 2 for our students, so check in on the ones that maybe aren't getting the concepts that you're noticing on day 1 and 2, or even day 4 and 5 that are not getting it. So check in personally with them, maybe have a one-on-one Zoom. It'll allow that flexibility, and then there will be planning time in there too. Yeah.
I was gonna ask the same question, are some of these districts that are in the 50-50 allowing some more planning time, or just for the staff?
Well,
Or does it just kind of depend?
it just kind of depends. The Commissioner of Education did allow us, I think we talked about 4 extra days of professional development that we can work in as needed to accommodate those planning needs for teachers. But it just varies from school to school. I know a lot of schools right now, as you remember, we talked about the week after Thanksgiving. A lot of schools right now are talking about the last 2 days before Christmas vacation, and is that planning time that we can have to reflect on the semester and what happened and prepare for the next semester. So, I mean, those are all topics of discussion.
If you were to have to make the decision to move to either 3 or 4, would you look at doing that, say, Wednesday or a Friday, and then all of a sudden, Friday, sorry, we're going to tier 4, parents figure it out, or kind of what's that potential communication plan? I know you never know, but.
Well, I will tell you that the announcement for Tier 3 is written. So it's ready. It's all ready. We've been working on it for the last week and have it ready to go. So when we look at all the key factors or indicators and say, okay, we need to go to Tier 3, we can make that announcement and hopefully give parents a 3 or 4 day advance notice would be our goal.
I think our goal would be to make it on Wednesday, Thursday timeframe rather than that Friday, because we know that the more time we can give people, the better off everyone's going to be. And I know that we had talked that even Wednesday, Thursday, kind of working with Public Health Solutions to figure out where the dial's going to be, what concerns that they have, and kind of gauging that before everything's released, and then hoping that as we move forward, here's why. Here's why we have gone this direction.
We get a pretty good update on Thursdays as to what the public health directors have determined for the risk dial. And so Wednesday would be a little early, but I would say by Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, we'd be able to make that announcement.
When you get your update from Public Health Solutions, do you get anything geographically? You know, when you look at Gage County, it's a fairly good-sized county. So, you know, if you have a huge concentration maybe in northeast Gage or southern Gage, that can be significantly different than what we may be seeing in Beatrice. So do they break it down for you? Or do you just get Gage County as a whole?
If there's specific clusters that are in different parts of the county, they'll tell us that.
Okay. Because then you can make a judgment based on the activity just within our district without pulling in, you know, something that's 15 miles away or 35 miles away. Okay.
Yeah. And I would say, and I'm glad you asked that question because it kind of relates back to Aaron's question about the triggering factors. And I think it's important to know that if Public Health Solutions tells us there's clusters in this part of the county and this part of the county which really aren't going to affect us at the current time, that's also part of our decision making. One of the factors we take into the decision making process.
Okay.
Is it specifically Beatrice or is it somewhere else?
Can you tell me how many positions went unfilled today, or were they all filled?
7.
7 positions went unfilled today.
Is that high for this time of year typically?
That's a good.
This year, no.
No, yeah. This
No, I mean compared to other years.
Compared to other years, I would say yes. Yeah. And we just pull from other areas and, because the 7 positions were paraprofessionals, and so we will adjust, and some of them are your one-on-ones, and so you definitely need to adjust because you have to ensure that that one-on-one student has a paraprofessional at that point in time. So our principals have done an amazing job of working, and because this has become a constant where we are shuffling and moving.
And I think that's a very important point that Mr. Jansen and I were actually talking about before the meeting started tonight, that, you know, our principals have been in a position where it's kind of like a monstrous game of chess or checkers, or, you know, trying to get everybody in the right positions and cover those positions that aren't filled. And so that's really where we're at, is up to this point, we've been able to adjust the checker game to make it work in our favor. But, and as the indicators, I'm trying to say this as delicately as I can, but the indicators tell us we're getting to a point when we're not going to be able to adjust the checker game much longer before we have to make a decision. So that's kind of where we're at.
Does Tier 3 really help staffing? If we have a staffing crunch?
That's my concern with Tier 3, because you still need.
I think it'd make it worse, won't it, if a person, because can't a teacher say I can only teach on Monday, Thursday, but I need to be gone Tuesday, Friday to be at home? I see that as I mean, that's one of those things that looked really good in the book. Oh, yes, that will work. But then when the reality of doing it, I think is going to be very difficult. And I do think that, I mean, just logically looking at it, okay, on Monday, half the kids will be there, so I'll do the lesson. Well, then on Tuesday, do I do that same lesson, or do I have another lesson? And then, so that means on Monday, I have to do it both in person and online. And then Tuesday, I just think it sounds very, very difficult.
Yeah, and thank you, because that educational piece that you've been a part of is a piece that I mean, we kind of understand it, but I think for the general public, they don't, and it's no offense to them, they just haven't, they don't understand that. And so but it's a key piece to the whole process. And I think you're right, Tier 3 comes with a certain level of complexity that, as you noted in July when we wrote these plans, we thought, oh yeah, that sounds really good because this is how it's gonna happen. The virus is gonna come in, we're gonna have this many people sick, then we're gonna have this many more people sick, and then we're gonna have this many more, and that's gonna tell, okay, we need to go to Tier 3. That's just not reality. So, we've learned a lot.
And I know part of Tier 3 is to try to reduce that capacity. So I would assume that you can, create a little bit more social distancing among students and so forth. Is that really possible in some of our buildings? I'm going to take the middle school, for example, where you've got a fairly high concentration of students. By going to 50% capacity, does that still allow in some of those classrooms that, maybe have 30 kids, now you're down to 15, can you still truly distance and essentially do what we're trying to do within those areas?
Well, and are we guaranteed it's gonna be 50-50, because does every class have half A through M and the other half N through Z? I don't think, it's all those little things that you just did, I didn't think about.
Yeah, both of you are exactly right. I mean, nowhere in 1950, when our buildings were built, or 1960, during the time frame that those buildings were built, did anyone ever think that we were going to have students sit 6 feet apart from one another? And at that time, they were probably even closer than they are now. So the answer to your question, Eric, is no, probably not. I mean, we can't truly accomplish 6 feet of social distance. 50% gets us down to making it more approachable. But in order to do that, we'd almost have to go to 25%, and then you'd be saying, well, why not just go fully remote? So, great, yeah.
And, kind of that point too, do you look building by building to determine who's in, who, is it always a straight alphabet split? I don't know, I assume you guys have looked at that if we go to that.
The hard thing about not going with a straight alphabet split is if I have let's say A through M goes at the high school, or A through N at the high school, and then whatever, the O through Z. So my high school daughter would go on one day, my elementary daughter would go on the other day, whereas I might need my high school daughter to help my youngest make sure that she is learning online when she is at home. So for families, we wanted to kind of keep that if your family's in school, all of them are in school at that time, so that the siblings could help out if parents were at work and were not able to take care of their kids on those dates.
That makes sense.
So one of the other things that I thought was really interesting about the incident command call today was Chief Lane noted that mental health issues are just escalating, which is probably slightly normal for this time of year, but I think it's even worse because of all that's going on. So it's stressful sitting back here. I can't imagine how stressful it is sitting where you're sitting and being in your buildings all day. So how is morale among our district? Or are you guys okay?
Well, we had a duck at preschool today on a leash.
That's good.
I do think mental health is a huge piece, and we've even seen in our students, they are antsier, and they are tending to maybe be a little bit more boisterous, or you can just tell that the climate's changing, but you can also, and it tends to be around the holidays, is when we see some of these, some of the behaviors come up. And we work with them, we address them, but I push out a positivity quote every day to our staff, and hopefully that is infiltrating the classroom as well, just because, again, the more that we can do to try to focus on mindfulness, to try to focus on just taking a deep breath, we're just focusing on who you are right now. Don't focus on the present, or past, don't focus on the future, let's just focus on right now. And so we have been doing some things to try to help that, because we do know that this is a stressful situation already to begin with, and now you add COVID to it. And the fact that, you know what, our school may say, I'm at home for 4 weeks, whereas normally it's just a week and a half to 2 weeks. I don't know if I can handle the 4 weeks. And so, you know, those are some things that it is tough. But I do think our teachers, our administrators are doing an excellent job of trying to build that positivity, trying to build the culture. I know that on Wednesday, our high school did a mindfulness PLC where they talked about their topics, but then they went outside and they grilled hamburgers, hot dogs, and kind of just had a way, you know, social distancing, but, you know, just had a way to just take a little bit of a break too, because, and so, you know, and kind of come back to, this is who we are, and this is why we're here, and we need to continue on because we have 4 weeks left, 5 weeks left, not a lot, you know, so how do we continue to push through and do amazing things until the end of the year? So it has been, and I do think that we'll continue to see those challenges pop up, especially if we do go remote learning, and that's where our school psychologists do an awesome job of really knowing which students that we need to continue to work with. Our counselors are all part of that, and so they do a nice job of really making sure that that is noted and taking every effort they can to keep in touch.
Is there also a thought, you know, just in just our discussions talking about the difficulties of what Tier 3 would look like, just saying, okay, we're going to kind of take the break and we're going to just jump to Tier 4, but it's going to be for a specified period of time. So we're going to go, you know, I guess when we implement new policies at work, at the hospital, whether it's no visitors or whatever that may be, we always say we're going to do this for a 2-week time frame, and then we'll readjust at that point or reevaluate. So, you know, is that a potential as well, I would assume?
Yes, and that's one thing we've talked a lot about is giving ourselves a chance to make a decision and evaluate that over a shortened period of time as compared to a decision that's a long ways out and then all of a sudden things changing, because that's the one thing we've learned through all this is things change very quickly and drastically. And so if we do something for a 2-week time period, that's much more manageable than if we do something for a 4-week time period. So yes, that's also the time. And I appreciate the question about the morale of the staff, and I think it's a real concern. It's a real concern because we have great people, and in so many ways we've seen those great people step up in what is the most challenging thing we've ever experienced, and still reach out to kids and still be patient with kids, and yeah, I'm just really, nobody's perfect, but our staff is doing an amazing job, and I feel very fortunate to look out across our district and see how they are responding in a difficult situation. And you know, we've got a great person who sends out a positivity quote every day, and her daughter knows that she won't let her be anything but positive. So we've got Dr. Nielsen at the helm of the Positivity Challenge, and you know, we're just trying to make sure that people stay as close to level as they can, try and give them what they need. But it's been a challenge for sure, and I'm very proud of our people, all the way from our administrative team, who's done a tremendous job of playing human shuffleboard and getting people where they need to be, to our teachers who have done a great job of reaching out to kids and working through the things that they have had to go through.
Well, I don't want to prolong this any longer, but so you can just make it a really short answer. You have considered the disruption in the kids' lives and parents' lives with going between Tier 3 and Tier 4. So is that playing a role in your decision as well?
It's definitely, the disruption that it's going to cause across the entire community is something that weighs very heavily in our minds. Ultimately, our job is to think about what's best for kids, and I think that's why we want to try and keep kids in school as long as we possibly can. So yes.
And I would assume I know the answer to this, but if we go to tier 4, would that mean extracurricular activities would be suspended?
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something we haven't spent a lot of time on. Again, I'll go back to when we wrote these plans in July. I think we just kind of assumed that when we went to the red on the risk dial, when we got to that tier 4, it would be Armageddon and the world would come to a shutdown like it did last March. And we're finding out, as you all know, that that's not necessarily the case. And so if I were to go back and rewrite that plan, and I guess as it sits, I know you've given us the ability to make adjustments through the resolution as need be. I'd go back and rewrite that plan to say that we will manage our activities in accordance with NSAA guidance. So if the NSAA came out and said, we're putting a halt to all activities, and that's what we would do. But as long as there were still teams that were able to play and compete and participate, because I think that gets back to the mental health part of things. That's a good mental health activity for our kids. It's a good mental health activity for our school and our community to see that our kids are still doing those things. So what I would say, Eric, and answer that question to try and shorten it down is, as long as we can participate and do so and feel confident we're doing that safely, we will continue to do that, even if we are in a tier 4 full remote learning capacity.
Any other questions or comments? Did that conclude everything you had on
It did. Thank you so much for bearing with us through all that, and thank you for the questions and the transparent conversation. I hope we have plenty of community members that are watching tonight to hear the discussion, and again, we'll keep you updated as to how we move forward, so thank you.
And Steve, thank you for joining us. Glad you could be there with us.
He hung in there.
Thank you.
All right. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be December 14th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the Administration Building. There will not be a committee of the whole meeting in November. An agenda for the meeting, which shall be kept continually current, is readily available for public inspection at the Superintendent's office during normal business hours. I would now take a motion to adjourn.
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 adjourn.
I have a motion, a second. Who did I get that from? Aaron gets it. All right. Can I have your votes, please?
Aye, we already got an aye from
We
here.
got an aye. All right. That's 7 votes. We are adjourned.
You're welcome. Thank you, Steve. You have a good evening. Will do. No, there really is not. I would agree. It's bedtime now. Good night.
Congratulations.
Maybe I'll just bring those.